Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Danny Steinmeier. I'm the pastor of Truth Family Bible Church in Middleton, Idaho, and I stand in favor of this joint resolution. The main part of my testimony today is just to acknowledge that there are more things at stake than simply just education. Our church does face tangential issues related to this. However, my main testimony is related to what I believe is really important here, and that is the myth of neutrality. The Idaho state constitution begins with a preamble, as you are all familiar with, and the preamble identifies that we are giving thanks to Almighty God for the freedoms that we have, and then the laws that come from that are recognizing that God has given us a freedom and an individual freedom in order to organize and to create a state and to have laws. Those laws are under God, and the Constitution acknowledges God. I do find it interesting that a religious people in the state can be taxed by a government that identifies an acknowledgement of God and then says anyone who has a religious affiliation or organization cannot benefit from that taxation. And so that's the basis for what I wanted to identify today. We are a people that are under God. Our Pledge of Allegiance identifies such as well. And so we are a religious people. There is actually no such thing as an irreligious people. And so when we're talking about appropriation of funding to supposed neutral or non-religious parties, I want to suggest to you that that is a myth. We are always supporting people with religious convictions. This world is filled with a religious affiliation one way or another. There is, of course, competing religions, but the reality of religious organizations cannot be denied, and so they should not be discriminated against solely on the basis of being a religious organization. So thank you.
Yeah, very good. He then got a question and answered it just as eloquently after that as well. But this really just comes down to the foundational aspects of our country and what we escaped, England and the Church of England and Europe and all the folks that came over here to establish freedom to exercise their religion, not necessarily to say that religion should have no part in our society, that should just be kept in the home or in the churches and not permeate throughout our society, because we are a religious people, and I think he so eloquently said it there. Brian, what do you think is going to be the biggest hurdle in folks voting for this if it makes its way to the ballot in November?
Well, you're going to see people come out and try and portray it as the government establishing a religion. Like you were saying, we created this country to freely exercise a religion, and what is often called the separation of church and state, which the words are obviously not found in the Constitution. What the Constitution says is that you shall not make an establishment of religion. And that context is lost on us today because, we haven't had an established church in America, whereas in England, where we came from, they had an established church. You paid tithes to the church as part of your taxes, and they could enforce morality and enforce very specific, religious ideals on their society. And that's really what they were escaping. Obviously, this amendment, making it able for parents to take their children's tax money and instead of taking it to the public school, take it to a private religious organization, that's not going to do that. It's not going to establish a specific denominational church over all of Idahoans. It's just going to allow parents and families to use money the way they see fit. If a Catholic family wants to go to a Catholic school and we have a scheme in place for an education savings account or a tax credit, then they should be able to use it there. If a Muslim family wants to go to a Muslim school, that would be just as fine. It's not establishing a religion, but that's how they're going to portray it if it does make it to the ballot. They're going to say that this is just a bunch of people who hate public schools and they're a bunch of Christian extremists. Maybe they'll even call us Christian nationalists and say that we're trying to get the government to pay for hardcore right-wing extremist Christian schooling, which is not what it's about at all. So the countering that is just trying to explain that no, this is removing a relic of religious bigotry. This is removing this amendment that was put in place to keep Catholic children from going to Catholic schools. And as the pastor said, and when he answered his question after that clip, that amendment has now been weaponized by people who hate Christianity.
Right, exactly right. And I recently listened to the arguments the Supreme Court arguments on the Espinoza versus Montana case, which is what which is the most recent case that a lot of these legislators are referring to when they look at the Blaine Amendment, because it was referred to in that case. And there's a little secret about me that I do love listening to to old Supreme Court arguments, because they're all captured on audio, so you can listen to their actual debates that are going on in the Supreme Court, and it's fascinating. And when that ruling came out, it was a 5-4 ruling at the time, the things that were being made clear was, if the state is going to offer a benefit to families to use for educational purposes, that the state cannot deny a family the ability to use it because they want to use it for a religious purpose, for a religious school. And so if the government is going to give out a benefit, they cannot discriminate based on religion. And it was fascinating to hear the arguments being made for that from a different angle, from the more liberal side of the court, than it was coming from the conservative side of the court. But also, just in our own schooling, when we went to our secular schools, we were learned that equality is, uber alles. That's the thing, right? Equality, and you should be treating everybody equally, regardless of their gender, their faith, their sex, whatever it is, and religion. So I think I don't know. I'm thinking that if this makes it to the ballot, there's going to be a lot of hard work getting over that church versus state argument. But I think when you talk about the equality and that this is removing some sort of bigotry, I think you've hit it there. So, any last thoughts on this before we? I want to get your thoughts on something else, but any last words here?
Well, I was just going to say the real opposition to this from the education establishment is because they're worried that this would lay the groundwork for a school choice money following the student, and I think that's really why they're opposed to it, and that's where they're going to attack.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes down to the money, that's exactly it. Okay, well, this morning in the House State Affairs, the other bill that came up was this online pornography protection bill that will put the onus on the actual providers of this objectionable content to verify the age of people accessing their materials. So I want to play. Elaine presented that this morning. I want to play that clip. So let's listen to that real quick.
Mr. Chair and Committee, I bring before you RS 31118, the Online Child Safety Act, and for the record, my name is Elaine Price, District 4, Coeur d'Alene. This legislation provides a cause of action for any person exposed to material harmful to a minor in violation of 482103, which is page 4, lines 3 through 35. These commercial entities that knowingly and intentionally publish this material shall be liable if they fail to perform reasonable age verification to verify the age of the individual. And the commercial entities is defined on page 2, line 24. The material harmful to a minor must be substantial, or 1/3 of the content that they provide. The solution we're offering falls to the content creator, leaving the third-party verification options up to these providers, and we're not mandating it by the state. We have a constitutional duty, Article 3, Section 24, to protect virtue and sobriety and promote temperance and morality.
She goes on to give the reasons why here that they're bringing this forward. But that's essentially what the bill does. It's going to put the onus on the provider to verify the age of the consumer of their product. So, Brian, we know that they're trying to tackle this. The legislature's trying to tackle this from various different angles. What's your take on this this new idea here?
Well, it's an interesting idea. Obviously, over on the Senate side, Senator Kevin Cook has his bill that he brought back from last year to penalize device manufacturers if they don't turn on a porn filter by default for phones sold to minors. Now, Representative Price has this bill that would go after the providers of material that's harmful to minors. I'm, still waiting for the bill to be printed to answer some questions about it. How does it, mandate that providers verify your age? Is it just click a button and you say, yes, I'm 18? We all know how well that works. Or do they have to submit an ID or a credit card, which I know in some other states they've done that. I think Utah did that. And, some of the big porn companies actually just stopped serving that state because they didn't want to actually have to enforce age verification, which, on the one hand, I think that's a great idea. Anything that keeps porn away from our children is fantastic. And if that means all the porn companies go out of business, then awesome. However, from a privacy standpoint, it is a little bit worrying that you have these websites that would be required to be taking your ID or taking a credit card in order for you to use it. I don't know. Like I said, I want to see the bill text to see exactly how it plays out. I almost lean on the side of, we need to keep this away from our children. Representative Price cited a statistic in her testimony that 73% of minors, I think it was like 14-year-olds, had, seen some form of pornography on the internet. It's just so pervasive, and I'm open to suggestions of how to stop it because it is, it's almost ubiquitous now.
Yeah, it really is. It's incredible what our kids are able to access these days and how easily they're able to access it. And even if you're just worried about them watching, violent videos on how to beat up your sister. I mean, it's like even that stuff is like hard to get away from. And there was a huge controversy back when I was young that we shouldn't be watching Looney Tunes cartoons because it was so violent, because Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote were so violent. So this kind of stuff has been around. We tried to fix it, but we've reached a new level with the pornography and the explicit materials and the pervasiveness of it, because they really do. People really out there preying on our children, and like you said, I appreciate everybody trying to come up with these solutions, and hopefully we can get we can make it to that point. All right, one last question for you, because you've been so generous staying on here with us. One last question: the fentanyl bill passed the House yesterday. It's on its way to the Senate. And it'll be assigned to a committee. I don't know if that's actually happened yet. Maybe you can tell us. But what's your prediction when it makes it to the Senate?
Well, I think it's back in the House committee. Representative Cannon tried to amend it during the print hearing. And then in the House hearing, Representative Heather Scott tried to send it to the amending order, and nobody was having it. So it's on its way to the Senate. I've heard some suggestion that maybe some people in the Senate might try to amend it as well. It's obviously got to go through its committee hearing where we'll get public testimony. All the police and sheriffs will show up again and talk about how important this bill is. And it is important. We need to do something. But there are some little issues with the wording that I think might need to be tweaked. And we'll see if they're able to do something at the committee level or if it goes to the Senate amending order. So there's still several more road stops before it gets to the governor's desk. But so far, the sponsors of the bill have been seemingly unwilling to hear anything about changing any words. So.
Yeah, talk about not wanting to negotiate when there's such a hot button issue here. I mean, we've seen other bills be pulled back into committee to get revamped, and we haven't heard from them. We haven't heard squat about them yet, but we hope so. All right, Brian. Well, thanks for we'll let you get back at it down there. Thanks for coming to us live from the Capitol. And where can people find you and keep in touch with you?
Well, I am most active on Twitter, at GemStateBrian, but of course go to gemstatechronicle.com where I post stories, guest editorials. I've got the ticker going you see up there with that I've just updated with the latest news. And yeah, I'll keep updating it as things happen, and things are happening fast.
Fantastic. All right, Brian, thanks again, and we'll check back with you.
Thanks, Matt.